Rev up your engines!
Alright, I'm always reading stuff, and finally I found somebody that I agree with. Not 100%, but Consumer Reports rated the 10 least reliable vehicles in America that you can buy. Now, unfortunately, they didn't put Jaguar Land Rover. I mean, I put them maybe on the top of the list, but be it as it may, the choices weren't bad. Number 10 was Kia as the 10th worst reliable one, because the Sorrentos and the Ford has really dragged them down. Those are terrible vehicles. Now, number 9 was Volvo. It's the 9th least reliable car for sale in America. The XC90 was their most unreliable. And number 8 was Ram, the Ram trucks. The 1500 Classic Ram got only 11 stars out of 100. That's pretty bad. It came down 12 positions from the ratings the Consumer Reports gave them last year. And I agree, they are getting worse. Number 7 was GMC. I agree with that too. The Yukon gets 2 out of 100 score this year. Now, number 6 is Mercedes-Benz. The GLE gets the worst rating. I do have to say, that video I made of the guy with his SUV paid $150,000, $60,000 for it, and it was falling apart, put together in Alabama. Yes. They're not reliable. A lot of technology, but it's not reliable technology. Number 5 was Volkswagen. I entirely agree with that. The Tiguan was their worst, rated 17 out of 100 points, and I agree. I don't like those Tiguans either. Number 4 was Genesis, even though they spent all their money advertising. Look what happened to Tiger when he was driving one and it crashed. Supposedly the safety system, didn't work too well. The GV80 SUV only scored 5 points out of 100. Number 3, as the third worst, is Jeep. The Cherokee, Wrangler, and Gladiator were the worst rated ones, with scores of 30, 25, and 23 out of 100 respectively. Number 2 was Tesla. I really agree with this one. The models S, Y, and X Teslas got 20, 18, and 5 out of 100. And the number 1 was Lincoln. It stayed on the top. It was the worst last year, too. The Aviator was the absolute worst, lowest one that they had. Said they were last year and they last this year. Now, I don't know why they didn't include Jaguar Land Rover. They're even worse, and I could pick some other ones. But I do have to agree. These are poor cars. I'm not saying that they were way off base here. It was a pretty good rating. I got to give it the 10 least reliable cars in America last year. Well, this year's almost next year. It's December 2021. Well, it looks like Subaru could be in serious trouble. Subaru has experienced a 2-year sales decline. When I was in Houston back then, there were quite a few Subaru dealers around, right? After the 1990s, all of them went out of business. Reoccurrence of the disappearing Subaru dealerships. Who knows? In 2020, they had a 12.6% decrease in sales. In 2021, we'll find out in a couple months how much they lost then. They've already admitted they're losing. When they did lose before, it was the Outback that brought them back. That was the real popular one. It's a pretty good vehicle. And of course, they're trying to blame it on the semiconductor industry, Realize one thing about Subaru. It's part of the Fuji heavy industry. It's a huge corporation. The car business is kind of small potatoes for these guys. Now Subaru's got some ties with Toyota and stuff. They're all working it together. It's not like this one company just standing alone like it used to be. They're all buying into each other. But they could be in trouble. They're losing a lot of sales. There's so much competition these days. The Outback was rather revolutionary in its time to make a SUV station wagon-y type thing, all-wheel drive, that was pretty reliable. Maybe they need to come up with a new idea instead of just slogans like everyone else. MHHB says, I got rusty rotors. I got a 98 Buick Central. I cleaned my brakes with brake cleaner. I rust on the front rotors, the center of the disc. Is that bad? Understand one thing. Brake rotors, most of them, somewhat weird materials, and most of them are just steel, right? It's made with iron. Iron rusts when it gets wet. We live on Earth where there's a lot of water vapor in our atmosphere, it rains a lot. They're always going to rust. As long as they work good and they don't pull or shake when you hit the brakes, it's perfectly fine. They are all going to rust. Some companies make them with certain coatings and stuff. If you want a really hilarious story, at one point in time, the Norton Motorcycle Company in England decided it's unsightly to have rusty rotors. So they chrome plated the rotors. Well, guess what? Chrome plating is kind of slippery, and when you hit the brakes, they didn't stop very well. It was probably one of the dumbest ideas in the history of motoring to chrome plate the rotors on their motorcycles so that they didn't rust. Well, they didn't stop well either. It's like these guys, they chrome plate everything on their motorcycle. The real expression for that is chrome don't get you home, right? Well, chrome doesn't dissipate heat that well either. So if you got an air-cooled motorcycle, let's say it's either cast iron or aluminum, right? The fins dissipate heat. You chrome plate them, they don't dissipate heat as well. So it's really a stupid idea. Brakes was even worse, so you could kill yourself because they didn't stop right. Everybody had to take all the plating off if they wanted to save themselves, or buy rotors that didn't have any plating on them at all. But you don't have to worry about anything. It's just normal. You're always going to get rust, especially in the center part. That's just what happens. It doesn't mean anything. If they're grooved and all worn, yeah, you want to change them, but you're going to get rust all over the place. It's just what happens with steel on Earth because there's water vapor and water everywhere. Jerome says, I installed a new radiator in my truck. There's a small coolant leak around the metal fitting for the tranny cool where it comes out the tank, side of the radiator. Hoping it's an easy fix without taking it apart. Can I remove the fitting, put some gasket maker, and then put it back on? Okay, here's what you want to do, and this will fix it. I've done it a zillion times. Forget gasket maker. Get JB Weld Quick, and they spell it weird, K-W-I-K. JB Weld Quick is a 2-tube epoxy, steel-based epoxy. It's fantastic. You just want to make sure that your tank's dry, clean it off, maybe heat it up with a hair dryer, get everything off. Then you mix the epoxy, and then you put it on the threads. Then you screw it in and let it sit for 6 hours. It says it dries in like 15 minutes, but wait at least 6 hours before you dry it. And you'll find that that'll seal it and it'll be perfectly fine. I have fixed a zillion of them that way. JB Weld Quick. It's amazing stuff. It's not cheap. I get the 2 big tubes. The little ones aren't enough. I get the 2 big ones and then I keep them for years because you can screw the cap back on and it's sealed since they're 2-part epoxy. They don't go bad. Each one's in its own tube, but the bigger ones are more efficient. I get them and I fix lots of stuff with it. Brian 3920 says, I tried to have my sensor relearned with no success on my 05 Dodge. The crankshaft sensor was changed. He tried to relearn it. It wouldn't let him relearn it. He tried different sensors. He says that the wiring seems okay, but it has codes U1415 and U1414. U codes are communication codes. So there's a problem in the communication. You want to pray that he's wrong and you've got a wiring problem somewhere. The power going into the sensor and then the power going back to the computer. Pray it's that. Sometimes it's a bad ground wire. Where the sensor goes, make sure it's grounded correctly. Make sure it's grounded. If it's not grounded, it can get a communication fault. Because if it's not the wire and it's not grounded right, it means your computer's going wrong. Your main computer. That could be bad and you can't reprogram it if it's gone bad. And I have seen that happen because sometimes if the sensors short out, they feedback and they break the driver circuit in the computer, and unfortunately the only way to fix it is to buy a new computer and have it reprogrammed. If he's right and there's not a wiring problem, but check the wiring and grounds first, pray it's that. Now the problem it's a Dodge and their computers do go out of bad, so I'm guessing it's got a bad main computer myself. Wolf63 says, I had a car accident and the airbags are activated. Can I buy airbags that are not new but have never been exploded? Well, that's a slippery slope. I mean, it's your car, so theoretically, you can do whatever you want. The letter of the law says that you're only supposed to buy airbags that have been certified by agencies, and they would have to go to some kind of certification process. It's technically illegal for a junkyard to sell you a used airbag, and then if it didn't work, you could sue the junkyard unless they went through this process, and hardly anybody goes through the process. That's the problem with airbags. You know, they can save people's lives, but if your seatbelt's on, they work too. But if they're saving your life, they can't just let you put a used one on. What if it doesn't work, right? Then whoever you bought it from is liable because they sold you something that didn't work. I have seen cars that were nice cars otherwise. They got in small wrecks, all the airbags. Some of them had 6 airbags pop off, right? They ended up junking the car because the actual insurance company, since they had full coverage, has to pay to fix it. The cost of replacing those 6 airbags is more than the value of the car, and they just junked the car. Now, if you want to drive a car with no airbags, that's your own business, right? You could buy that car cheap. Somebody can't really sell you a used airbag because they're liable, and there are an inspection process that theoretically people can go through. I personally have never seen anybody do it. I've seen guys just go to junkyard, buy a used one, put it in, drive away, and just hope that the thing's going to work. Because, I mean, you think about it, okay, you got a 12-year-old car. It's got airbags. They're all 10, 12 years old. Who knows if they're going to work anyways? I don't personally trust them when they're that old. I always put my seatbelts on, right? But you're going to have a hard time finding used ones somewhere. Theoretically, the junkyards can't even sell them to you, because if they do and they don't work, you could sue the junkyard for millions if somebody got killed. So, you know, all this liability involved is pretty much stuck. You got to buy new ones or don't have any at all, or just, if you can find them somewhere and put them on yourself. No mechanic. I would never install used ones on anyone's car. I'd be liable for it. So no way. I would only put brand new ones on, because at least they're brand new. You see, they came from the dealer. They're the right ones. Yeah, put them on, reprogram it. No problem. But I wouldn't personally put them on. There's too much liabilities for me as a mechanic. All right, it's official. People have lost their minds even more during this pandemic. A guy took a Subaru Impreza STI and put a V12 engine in it. He wanted to see how fast it could do the quarter mile. He wants to go under 9 seconds, right? Now, what he did was he took out the Subaru engine and he put in a V12 Toyota engine. You might think, what the heck, Toyota V12 engine? Well, there's a car in Japan called the Toyota Century. It's a luxury car for rich people. They have V12 engines. No mention on the horrible gas mileage the thing will probably get, but you want the Subaru that can out-Subaru all the Subarus. Why not put a blown V12 engine in it and see what happens? Now, he's taking out the 6-speed manual. He's putting in a BMW dual-clutch transmission from a 335i, I believe. You know, those ZF transmissions are pretty good transmissions. They can take a lot of power, so it's been automatic. You can drive it around in the street, too. You know, he's saying it's a street, going to be street and track ready. I don't know if I want to be driving that thing down a quarter mile, though. That little thing with a big engine like that, he's going to have to do some real radical change of the suspension system, too, not just throw a giant engine in. So, yes, people have gone and saying they're putting V12 Toyota engines in little Subaru Imprezas and seeing how fast they can go. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.